It is now officially set. Undefeated Oregon is #1 overall. SMU, and this was the big question, despite a heartbreaking loss in the ACC championship game, did edge out Alabama to get the final spot. The top 4 seeds are reserved for conference champions. That's why Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State get the first round byes. Rest of the teams slated to play in the first round on college campuses. Once again, the big story yesterday was Alabama getting left out in favor of SMU. So Dan does so much of the college for us here, and Paul Finebaum is the voice of the SEC as much as everybody else combined. So I've been waiting to ask you. I want to hear your opinion on this more than anybody else, Paul. Do you believe the committee made the right call putting in SMU and not Alabama?
I don't, Greeny, but I also don't want to waste the audience's time with a lot of fake outrage, because SMU has a very good record. They don't have a very good resume. Alabama has a good resume and record, but they also have so many bad moments that I think they cost themselves. Had Alabama not gotten blown out by Oklahoma 24-3 2 weeks ago, I think they would be in, but they made that committee's choice easier, and they did it to themselves. And while we could spend the rest of the hour talking about where the committee missed on seeding, where they missed on team selection, ultimately, they didn't have a lot to work with, so while I'm not thrilled with it, I'm also not going to waste too much more time on it.
Here's the way I look at it. If a mistake was made here, the mistake was made the week before.
Correct.
You couldn't possibly drop SMU below Alabama without setting a precedent you'd never be able to unset, which is teams will start boycotting or forfeiting their conference championship games.
Correct.
Once you put SMU ahead of them last week, Paul, I think they had no choice but to leave them there. This was a decision that was made last Tuesday, much more than it was made yesterday, Paul.
The biggest problem this committee had is that Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, got up on Tuesday night and completely blew it. I mean, he said things that committee chairmen never say. And by the way, I appreciate him being transparent, but he put a roadblock up, and he essentially said what you alluded to. And the reason why that committee went the direction, they're people that represent college football. And to make it easy for the audience, the college championship games bring in tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and they would have in essence issued a Supreme Court ruling, Greeny, saying they are null and void. So Alabama got jobbed, but again, Alabama did it to themselves. So they preserved the conference championship games at least for another year. They're not going to be around long. You and I both know that.
Dan, what do you think of the decision at the end of the day?
It was the right decision. Alabama didn't get jobbed. Alabama's more talented than both Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, and they lost to them both, okay? So Alabama did it to themselves. If anybody got jobbed, I would say it's a South Carolina. SMU proved that they are a very good football team. Everyone has to stop using the word deserve. The committee doesn't care about deserve. Are you good enough? And they did show that in the second half. I agree with Paul. When Ward Manuel said, well, if you didn't play on championship weekend, you can't jump somebody else in front of you. That was the flaw. Because when Clemson goes and wins, well, then the win by South Carolina the week before looks a little bit more impressive. That's a whole nother conversation. I do think the big takeaway from this first year is that the conference champions, yes, should get automatically in. It should not be an auto buy.
Yeah.
Okay, the seeding should be 1 through 12 because the seeding is 1 through 12. That is the big takeaway, because you have teams slotted at 5, 6, and 7, and teams slotted at 3 and 4 and going, do we really believe that that's a better team? No.
It's worth reminding everyone, this is the first year of the system. So there were bound to be some issues and things that they can figure out. The most important part is getting the 12 teams in. If you're in, you have a chance to play for the championship. I get it. I agree with what you're saying.
Matters.
It matters, and I think it's something they'll adjust as they go. But more importantly, either you're in or you're not. If you're not, you don't have a chance either way. Paul, one last thing. Which single coach is under the most pressure now going forward amongst the 12?
Well, I think it's a dead heat, Greeny, and I don't like to be that way, but Ryan Day has his job on the line. If he gets knocked out in the first round, I think that's it for him. He's not going to make it, and he'll be fired. I think he likely will be fired. The other coach who has enormous pressures is James Franklin. we can always count on James Franklin of Penn State to blow a big game. And he did it the other day. You saw the graphic on the screen. He's something like 1-14 against top 5. Well, he won't have to worry about that with SMU, but somehow if he loses that game or the next game, I think the heat on him is going to be ratcheted up to an all-time high.
Yep, they've got SMU and then Boise, which the people in the Big Ten and the people who are Penn State fans are going to say, this team needs to make it to the Final Four or we're going to have a problem here. Paul, awesome. Thank you.